Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we put the business back in lady business. Hosted by Jennifer Justice, founder and CEO of the Justice Department, a management strategy and law firm that works with female and woke male entrepreneurs, executives, talent, brands, and creatives to build and maximize their wealth, focusing in the areas of tech, consumer product, finance, media, entertainment, and fashion. Jennifer interviews entrepreneurial women who have done it all, who will be sharing their secrets on all things business, especially as a woman. These highly successful women will share strategies and insights, including what not to do and what it takes to win. And now, here's your host, Jennifer Justice.
Hi, welcome everybody to this edition of Taking Care of Lady Business, where we're putting the business back into lady business. Today, we're going to talk about co-founders and how you find them with Amy, Parker, and Gina Pell. They run an amazing platform, a content and community platform for women called The What? Hi, ladies.
JJ.
Hi there.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. So I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Tell me a little bit about the company, how you started it, and then we'll really get into how you found each other and how you never left each other.
I just can't quit you, Amy. Amy, you go, because you're the executive and I'm just the content chief. So you go for it.
Oh man. Well, yes, it's true. Gina and I've been partners for almost 20 years now.
Not almost.
I guess it has been 20. Yeah, it's been.
Wow.
Try 21.
Actually,
girl.
exactly.
Try 21.
All right, 21 years now.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Who remembers the anniversaries in the relationship?
Know, right?
Yes, right.
I've been with her longer than I've been with my husband. So so The What is our third venture together. And we've always been in the space of women's media, women's community. Quick background. Our first company was Splendora.com. We had a blog before there were blogs. We had a private social network with 10,000 women before Facebook existed. We started in 99, sold in 2010. During that time, we worked with so many incredible women across all industries. It was a luxury city guide, so best places to shop, spa, eat, stay. And in that, we were able to create so many interesting relationships with women who were also just coming up in their career, whether it was a woman owning, who ran a spa, to the advertising director at Bloomingdale's or the VP of marketing at Dior. And so we've been really lucky to always be working with some really incredible women over the last 20 years. So sold Splendora in 2010. Sukhinder Singh Cassidy of Google was launching Joyous, the first video commerce platform. And we went and worked with her to build that brand. We quickly realized that we were not meant to be working for someone other than ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we were there for a couple of years, parted ways, did other projects. And as Gina said, we just couldn't quit each other. So we got back together in late 2015 to launch The What. And
first we drank a lot of rosé at the beach.
Did.
We're like, oh my gosh, I have a great idea. Okay, let's talk about our bad idea. Our bad idea because we rented a beach house in Malibu. Well, they said it was a beach house, and it turned out to be this really crappy apartment.
Shack.
It was the worst place.
Oh my God.
And so we had this idea of launching a company that would curate the best Airbnb properties. Okay, and then we quickly figured out how the hell are we going to do that? We're going to have to pay for a lot of B&B rentals, Airbnb rentals. But then we launched The What, which was basically one portion of Splendora, which was the newsletter. And we just wanted to launch an old school newsletter, informing women on what matters, what's cool, what's in, what's not in. And so we've been doing that for 5 years now.
Yeah.
A little over 5 years.
We'll be at 6 years, November 6th. I remember that anniversary.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then how did you get together in the first place? How did this happen?
Gina,
well, actually, you know what? So I started Splendora in 99, and then I called my best friend in London to come help me because she was so good at sales. And so she came And she was my first co-founder. And then she got pregnant and had to leave the company. And she hired Amy. We didn't know Amy. And so when she hired Amy, I was telling her, because my girlfriend like really loves beautiful things, beautiful people. And I said, are you sure this broad knows what she's doing? I mean, are you just hiring her because she's hot? Because no thanks. Like we hired Amy as our director of business development. And Amy and I started working together. We didn't really know each other that well. And then we went out to dinner one night after this event, this really great event. We started talking and we realized that we thought the same way, which is we dreamed things into reality.
Mm-hmm.
That was a stony conversation, Amy. I think that was like 2 or 3 bottles of champagne or something. And I hadn't met a lot of people, women especially, that had that kind of, I don't even know if we call it, if it's confidence. It's just a philosophy of, I decide what's going to happen and then it happens. I make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, I mean, I think that was like, that was our moment, right? That was our defining moment, as Kierkegaard would say.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So that, I mean, that's a good point, right? It's like you have to have, this common thread, an understanding, right? It's like what you want to do and achieve. So it sounds like philosophically you understood what you wanted, right? Is that what it was? I mean, what was the philosophy? What was it that you guys like just melded over?
Well, it's like falling in love, right? It's any kind of relationship that lasts. It's like when you figure out that it's less about what your goals are, because goals change all the time.
Right.
But it's more about how do you think? How do you approach the world? How do you see the world, right? And Amy and I realized at that moment, we saw the world and the way that we approached it in the same way. Yeah. And then it's not like all of a sudden we're like, all right, let's be partners, right? I mean, our company, the whole .com thing was collapsing around us.
It was, and that's when we like our love, our bloom, like burgeoning love for each other was put to the test. Not too long after, in spring of 2001, when everything started to collapse.
Well, 1999 was when I mean I started the company. Then in 2000, right, like when we hired Amy and everything was looking up, March 2000 is when the huge headlines all over every single newspaper in the world said the .com bust, right? So I'm like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Can I swear on this show? I assume I can.
Have you met me? Yes.
Have you met me? Yeah. So we had to fire everybody. And when the shit hits the fan, I kind of really go inward and start to panic alone. And Amy was like, just come on, y'all, this is a good idea. We shouldn't close. Meanwhile, we're walking down to the garage with our boxes full of our crap, and trying to figure out a way to return all the computers. Remember all those computers we leased?
God, I do. Yes.
Just trying to sell office furniture. And Amy's enthusiasm because I didn't want to close down. I didn't want to close down because I didn't want to be a failure. And but I just didn't see a way forward. We couldn't raise any more money. We had like $100,000 in debt, and we had no people. And our people who we laid off just kept showing up at the office. They just wanted to hang out with each other while they were looking for a job. And and then like before you knew it, like we just started hustling, and we, instead of doing the website temporarily, we started making printed directories, printed like books. Yeah. Instead of, our dream was to create like a Yelp, or city search of great products. And so instead what we did is we just quickly pivoted and started making guidebooks of San Francisco.
Because it's what people understood back in the day. Nobody wanted to be digital at that point. Everyone was terrified. So and
we just shifted, and we're just like going, and so I think
the original
co-founder, the original pivot. I think in terms of co-founders, I don't know how people do it untested. Like they just go, you will be my co-founder, without putting them to the test. I mean, I think, like most people live with their partner before they decide to get married, if they ever get married, right? They date them for a while before. And so I don't know how people can just choose a co-founder and just start building something together. I mean, I observed Amy and I worked together for probably like 5 years before you became my co-founder, right, Amy?
Yep, correct.
Then I said, Amy, I mean, you're obviously my partner, so I'm going to make you an official partner. And, you know, and then she's been my partner ever since.
I mean,
Because we work the same way.
yeah, so you have the same work ethic, you have the same like
Mhm.
kind of vision and outlook on life,
Mhm.
but you also have to have different roles, right? Because that's one of
Mhm.
the things that I find a lot of co-founders don't even know. It's like, well, we both do the same thing. We're really
Oh,
exactly
no, we don't do the same
but
thing.
okay, who's going to talk to the lawyer? Who's going to talk to the accountant? Who's going to do the PR? Who's going to do the interviews? You
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
Talk about that. How did you, it was a natural kind of split, right? But
It
there has to be
was.
some decisions you do together. How do you guys split that up?
So we were lucky because in that period of 5 years, we got to see each other's natural talents and where we have that skill set and where we want to spend our time. So it was nice because after we officially became partners, our business really started to ramp at that point too. And so we were on a hiring spree. We were bringing in more revenue than we'd ever brought in. So it was a natural split of developing content and design, which was Gina's role, and then me focusing on the business and marketing and sales aspect of the business. And so that's how we've always naturally divided it. That's where our talents lie. I mean, I can write, but it takes me a long time to do what Gina can do, just like that. And Gina loves to be in and selling as well when we were selling our sponsors. And it's fun when we can like bring our together energy to a project. But it's also, if you want to build something successful, you've got to divide and conquer.
Mhm.
Right. I mean,
Plus Amy loves selling. I mean, Amy loves the business part.
I do.
I can do the business part. I don't love the business part at all. Like that spreadsheets. She knows I hate spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And I've always, I was the creative from day one, so that's simple.
well,
Yeah.
I think it's rare to see somebody who started something and it was their baby to then say like, I don't want to give up some control, Gina. So that is, and have a co-founder because that's, one of the issues, right? It's like, I want to do it all and I have to do it all,
I've never been that way. Ever.
I don't think you can be that way and be a real, like, and really grow a business, right?
Yeah. Well, for me, like I said in the beginning, when I was just about to go out of business, for me, I would never want to start a business without a partner. And, Amy's always been my chosen partner. What we do for each other is when one is down, the other one brings the other one up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just telling a friend the other day, she's like, how's it going with you guys? I'm like, actually, we're doing great, but I feel so guilty because I've been kind of slacking. I can't seem to get the engines revving after summer because I finally had a summer, but meanwhile, like Amy is just doing great. Like Amy's like, oh, I close this, I close that, I close this. And I'm just total slacking. I'm like eating potato chips, like in my bed.
I didn't know that was slacking. I thought that was just a Tuesday, but
exactly.
I can work while eating potato chips, but
So I think that partnership, when you find a good partnership, you keep each other going because there's undoubtedly hard times, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing I think, what keeps us always working together. And when we worked with another, she wasn't our partner, she was our boss, she was our CEO. And she was brilliant and I've never seen anybody work this hard. It's not just about finding somebody with a work ethic. She didn't know how to celebrate. And that's something I think the success of our relationship for Amy and me is that number one, we have always agreed family comes first. Mm-hmm. Okay, most people would not say that, but for us, family comes first. My mother lives with us and I have 2 kids. Amy has a child, it's like, so we know that about each other. At the same time, we work our asses off. So it's like, we might be taking time with our family, but we're still kind of working, but family comes first. And also when we're not feeling it, we will just like have cocktails over Zoom or something, we like to celebrate our wins and we don't just keep going to the next thing, putting pressure on ourselves, like to find a partner who, if that's what's important to you, and that's very important to me. I know it's important to Amy.
Oh yeah.
Could we kill ourselves and make 50 times the amount of money that we make? Absolutely. Could we go out right now and raise $20 million? We could, but we decided not to raise any money.
Mm-hmm. I know. And we've been really fortunate because we've always we've been on the same page about these really big decisions too, because we've been approached to raise money. I broached that subject with our first company years ago. Maybe we should consider going out and raising another round. And there's such a level of respect and trust in each other and what we have together and what we want to build, that we're able to, it's not even overcome it. It's just work through it. Like, does this really make sense? Like, we know how to push each other in a way to get to the heart of what we, like what the issue is. Like, do we want to raise, or should we be looking to sell?
Well, we almost sold last summer.
We did.
And Amy talked me out of it. Amy talked me out of it. And I'm so glad that you did. Because you're like, why are you doing this? And I said, well, wouldn't it be great to just sell after, like we just sell, like send it away. And you're like, but why did we start this to begin with? We wanted to work together and we're having fun. Then we're going to go work for someone else. Like, we're going to have to work for somebody else after we sell. We're going to have to go with the company for a little while. Do you want that? You want to be flying from here to there and having the pressure, someone else's pressure? And I thought, no, I don't. So I was selling for ego purposes. And it's like, and the money wasn't going to be really significant. Even if it was, it's like, is that money going to really change my life and the way I live? No. So why? Why?
Why? Yeah.
Well, you guys,
is so much more fun.
Well, you're definitely hitting on some of the issues, right? Like, these are the things that you need to know about your potential, spouse, basically, your work spouse, things like that. Like, what is your vision for the company? Like, what is like, where do you want it to go? What are your goals? What do you want the work culture to be? Do you want it to be family first, or do you want to just work your asses off, not see your family for 5 years and try to sell it? Do you want to raise money, and from whom? Like, these are big questions. These are massive questions that need to be like thought about. And they're not something that you can have like 3 dinners and be like, okay, let's do it because we both want to do this and we hate our jobs. Right.
Right. Yeah.
What other kind of big decisions do you think there are when you're talking like through these things that you need to like be on the same page? Oh, and then the division of work for sure, right? Like that as well.
Yeah. Well, we know each other so well. So we naturally knew, in the very beginning when our first company, I mean, I had hired Amy to do business development, and then, she just took over the entire side of business and sales. Right. So that was just a natural, outgrowth of our partnership. And then she just kept doing it. Something I've heard that I find really fascinating is when you don't know your co-founder. Like, let's say you don't have the time to date your co-founder. You need a co-founder now. Something I heard that's fascinating is that there's some people who they do like a manifesto, right? They have each partner write an operating manual for themselves. Like, here's what I want to do. Here's how I work. Here's how I like to be approached. Here's how I don't like to be approached. So it's an operating manual of how this person works, what they think their role is, their domain. And then they come together and they share their operating manuals and they work it out, And of course, I mean, having a great lawyer, we had a really great lawyer when we started Splendora, and he was just a junior partner at Perkins Coie, one of the biggest firms in the Valley. And now he's a partner, so it's like, that was 20 years ago. And he was really pivotal in having us think through, especially if your partner's looking at your equity and what happens if you're 2 partners. I mean, Amy and I went through that, so what happens if one of us dies, and like, what happens to our shares? Like, does our husband run it? Does it revert to me? Do I have to buy her out? You know what I mean?
Yeah, those are big issues that I don't think a lot of people understand or think through, right? So, and you have to go through this like yucky stuff that women traditionally like avoid, even in their families, and their husbands taking care of the money and thinking about these things, but they're real things. You should be doing an operating agreement, and then in that operating agreement, there's so many different things that you have to decide mutually. And like, and think about it for potentially forever if you don't want to sell the company,
course.
like working
Yeah.
and, and how you do that. And sometimes, and how that happens is that the company has its own operating agreement, and then each co-founder has their own lawyer even. Did you guys do that, or you just use the one person and because you knew each other, you kind of agreed on everything?
We used a single, just a single agreement. And because individually we know how we operate,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that we don't check in with each other.
Yeah.
And are we still signing off on our vision? I mean, there are always these key moments in a relationship and business where you have these opportunities to, I take door 1 or door 2 or door 3. And so, are we still bought in together on, like, we want to go down this path? This is what we want to focus on. And if we're not, how do we reconcile that? And where does it make sense? But that's where having a partner that you trust and have just a tremendous amount of respect for comes into play. Because after Gina and I parted at Joyous, I went on and worked with someone else as a partner. She wanted me as her co-founder. We didn't know each other at all. And we worked together for 18 months. And it was not, there was not good chemistry. It was not a great working relationship. We had very different ideas. And it really just drove home the fact and just the idea that what Gina and I have and what we've built, or what we had built, in those 10 years prior, was very unique and very special, because we had the ability to test each other. We weren't friends before we became co-founders. We weren't co-founders before we became friends. We were just in an environment where we could really work together, observe each other, and gain that trust and respect. And the situation that I found, I didn't find myself in it. I put myself in it, right? But there was none of that. It was a very forced situation, and it felt it. And that made a difference, not just in our business, but, how our employees reacted and the decisions, some of the poor decisions we made. So, after 18 months, I left, but when Gina and I got back together and made the decision to work together, I had that as a reference and recognizing that, how do we do things differently? Because we intentionally decided to be partners in the what. And that was very different than what we had 20 years ago with Splendora. It was like, hey, we've already proven ourselves, let's do this. And with the what, it was an intentional, like, hey, let's start this business together and make a go of it. So
when you started over with the what, and then you did a whole new, like, operating agreement, going through the whole thing all over again, making all those key decisions as equals fresh from the start. Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, I know. I see sometimes, I'm like on, some women's blogs and stuff. Does anybody have a co-founder agreement like that? I just found somebody and I was like, no, do not do this.
Gosh, no.
This is just,
No, we work with our
do you have
lawyer.
a prenup we can just fill out so I can, like, these are big things. These are big decisions.
They
These are big
are.
documents,
Our
We did. So we actually worked with our lawyer. Like, I didn't work with my lawyer. Amy didn't work with her lawyer. Both of us had a lawyer from Splendora days that did all of our copyright stuff, and we really trusted her. And she approached it with us, because she had both of our interests, and, like, neither of us were closer to her. And so she laid out the early documents, and we looked at it, and that we had a discussion about it for like a week. We talked about it. We talked about it with our families. We talked about it with her. We talked about it with each other. And it was like,
right?
I mean, we've been around. We've been to this rodeo before.
Yeah, we have, but it makes a difference, because I think at the very beginning, however you're going into this, you have to plan ahead. You have to forecast, and you want to start a partnership on, I think, the right foot. You want to start it, everyone has their best intentions, but to have it documented and then to feel good about it, I think gives you so much more
clarity
and clarity as you're growing your business, because you don't have to worry about the nitty gritty. That's covered, and you're comfortable with the decisions you've set for yourself. yourselves, and then you can focus on what you want to do, which is growing a brand, growing a business.
Right. The other thing it does is if eventually you do have some kind of argument or whatever, and you can't get through it you want to just get out, not even an argument, like one just wants to get out and retire, something life-changing has happened. Like there are things in the agreement that handle that,
Yes.
and mechanisms in there. So what you can do and how you can get out. And it's just helpful in the end.
It's a prenup.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
It
Exactly.
totally
You can
is.
still get divorced. And look, all it's like you two are very lucky that you found each other. And, it's not to say that somebody can't meet somebody and become a co-founder, but you really should go through all the work. I know that there's like, you can look on Google, there's like checklists of things and like just talk about them. I've actually referred a few people to that, and literally they've all decided, not one of them have decided to be partners after that.
Wow.
Well, because they've all fundamentally figured out that they're totally different. Your experience, like I'm from the music industry. So like people are like, you're really gruff and aggressive and no. And I was like, but that I'm not mean. It's just like, that's how the music industry is. It's just like, I want this. Like, I don't start every email like, hello, how are you and your children? How's it been? I'm also a single mom running a business. It's like, I have shit to do. Like if I'm on the phone, I'm like, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't mean I'm mean. It's just, that's how I am. And, negotiation, you shouldn't, like, there's many articles how if you're nice in a negotiation, you're losing already. Like you're done. Like this is a negotiation. Both sides want something completely opposite. So figure out in the middle. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to scream at each other, but they're contentious by nature, and so, I know that I'm not for everybody, there was somebody I was working with that was super emotional and super sensitive. And it was just like, this is never going to work, because if I just said something like, hey, can I have that? It's like, what did I do wrong? And it was like, okay, that's not like, I can't tiptoe around my life, and she was felt like she was tiptoeing around. It just was never going to work. And so, that's just like tone in an everyday work,
temperament. I mean, Amy and I are not very sensitive people. I mean, well, we are, but we're not, I don't think we've ever cried at work about work.
About work, no.
No. I think like we have,
save it for the real shit that goes down in life.
We can totally lock down, compartmentalize, but I would say that, I think actually, Amy, this is like the first time I thought about this, but I think like the key to our longevity is the fact that we're both very open-minded with each other, right? So it's like a lot of times I always joke, but like, I'm like, you forced me to have a summit and I didn't want to, and I didn't, and I still don't. But if we had not had those in-person summits, and it was such hard work and it was so terrible, right? For me anyway, for me, the somewhat introvert, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are today. So like Amy pushes me and I'm really resistant, but I'll be open enough to go listen to what the point she's trying to make, and I will go along with it.
Right.
Maybe have I ever said no, like completely no? Yeah, maybe I have a couple of times.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's like we stay open. We stay open to each other. Like we have to make the case for each other.
Yeah. But when one of us feel that strongly about something, then it's like you got to pick your battles, right? And so you save it for those moments where it's like, yeah, that's a hard no.
Right.
Well, we push each other, but like instead of like trying to negotiate, you know what I mean? Like
we know each other too well, though, too.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean, Amy is the salesperson here. Okay. So
she is, I know. Hey, I'm pretty good at it too, though, Amy.
Yeah, she is.
Well, the creative,
like, Gina really likes sales. Oh my God, I hate it.
You're overwhelming me. I can't. The creative.
You were talking about how so many potential co-founders have decided not to be co-founders after really diving in. And I mean, we've talked about how we got to live with each other. I believe that just generally, and like, it's a life philosophy for me. Like, I believe going through 4 seasons with somebody, something, in a business in a certain state to really understand how you feel about it. And we have a lot of friends and allies who are co-founders. And most of those relationships have worked pretty well. But the ones that have not, it always comes down to that moment of like, it's this very hard moment of, I want to go this direction. No, I want to go this direction. And they're never able to reconcile that. And I've had that conversation with so many women who have gotten to that point. And what makes me sad is that they don't have a friendship anymore. They don't have a relationship at all. And that is, I think that's what we tell people too, because there are a lot of women who are friends and they say, we want to start a business together.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's fine. And, great if it can happen. But what you're risking is you're risking the loss of a friendship.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? How valuable is that? Is it, does it weigh more than the idea of starting a business together? Because those are big considerations. And then the flip side is, I was just talking to this very successful solo founder the other day, and she's like, God, I wish I had a co-founder. I'd give anything to have a co-founder. But here I am raising Series B, and clearly that's not going to happen. But I wish I had this. And so it's, but she feels she's too far along. So, I think we're certainly very fortunate, but there are a lot of big questions to ask yourself when you're starting a business, especially thinking about it with someone else who is often a friend.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's also whether or not you want a co-founder, whether you want to do it yourself or
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what kind of advice you were going to give, but I think you just gave it. So, and I know that we're running low on time. I always ask this question at the end, and I like to do a little spontaneous. So everyone's been asked this question, and what is the worst advice you've ever received? Because women get a lot of shit advice.
I would like to say that the worst advice that we received was that famous conversation that we had with someone who shall go unnamed, who also runs a media company, right?
Yes.
Which was,
oh man, yes.
He said to us when we started, he said, oh my God, I would just take your faces and take your, old ass. I mean, he didn't say that, but basically he was saying like, take your old ass, photos or whatever, personas out of your brand. No, nobody wants to see that.
Yeah.
Right. That's what he's telling us. So we were at Splendora. I was, in my early 30s, and I really hated the idea of stepping out in front of my brand. And I got amazing advice from this woman who's like a genius, and she's a very, very, very famous creative director, now retired. And she said to me, you need to step out in front of your brand, and you need to let people know what the brand is all about. And I was like, I don't want to put my face out there, and she's like, well, I think that you should, because sometimes brands need a brand leader, and you're the creative director. I'm like, nope. So I didn't do it. And Amy, I started doing it later. And that's actually how the brand sold, right? It was like, it sold based on our personalities. And so when we started What, we put ourselves front and center, and it was about Amy. We always write in we, and it's Amy and me. And so he was like, you do not want to be associated with your brand. It's not going to grow that way.
He said, for some reason, some people are still following what you read, but.
But but that was the worst advice. And then we were like, it was funny because like when I was young, I was too shy to put myself out there. And then, now we're older and we're confident, and we're like, fuck yeah, let's put ourselves out there, right? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people like us. We could be the older sisters for some people, or the younger sisters for the old people, like the 90-year-olds.
But it's specific to like who who is your community, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's why I say it's the worst advice, because Amy and I had never grown a real community. Mm-hmm. We had followers, we had plenty of followers and subscribers back in the day of Splendora. But once we started putting ourselves out there, we were able to grow a community of 100,000 women. Like 24,000 of those women are on Facebook alone in a private community, and that would not have happened. And at the head of our community is Amy and I having dinner together. You know what I mean? Like they needed to see real women there to say, okay, I trust them, And so that was the worst advice that I received.
The worst advice, but also that was the greatest motivator, because we walked out of there feeling, we were so hang dog. We're like, oh shit, this sucks.
And now I was like, fuck
We
that
own.
guy.
But it took us, gosh, gee, I think it took us two or 3 months after that. And we had completely turned it around. There was nothing to turn around, but that feeling, we took it and used it to actually like go hardcore and build our community. And
I have to say, he gave us the worst advice.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the very best advice in the same meeting.
Yes, that's right.
By the way, this meeting, he had a little dog that he just bought. And he had showed us that while we were sitting that meeting, that dog was able to get more Instagram followers than we had. Because he's like, why aren't you on Instagram? We're like, we don't like Instagram. He's like, I don't care if you don't like it. And so the second piece of advice, which was the best advice we ever received in our career, was forget about the platform. Because Amy and I, when we started it was just going to be the what list. It was just going to be email. He's like, an email? Only old people read emails. Like, why do you care how it gets served up? Serve it everywhere you can and see where it's going to take. See where people are going to bite. And if it wasn't for him saying that, we wouldn't have put it on Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, right? And then we realized that Facebook is where it just exploded in a private group. And we would have never known that. So that was like,
Yeah.
That
was the best, because it also led us to the idea that our brand is much bigger than where it sits, whether it's the alliance, whether it's the Facebook community, whether it's the newsletter. So it lives everywhere. So I'm thankful to him for that. He's
hilarious.
Nameless though.
Yeah.
I kind of love him though. I mean, you got to love somebody who just like tells you like it is. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Well, thank you, ladies, for coming on. Loved having you and love your story. It's amazing. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this edition of Taking Care of Lady Business. Please like, subscribe, and let us know what other topics that you want to hear about. Until then, I'm Jennifer Justice.